How's it going? We're going to be making nabe, or a Japanese hot pot today, utilizing all the ingredients that you see before you. This is going to be heavily inspired by the first episode of the anime Delicious in Dungeon. Also known as Dungeon Meshi, it's a Japanese manga and animated series that fits the spirit of this channel. It's got heart, it's got humor, and it's got a good bit of cooking, which I actually knew nothing about until I stumbled upon it on Netflix recently, and from the get-go, I absolutely loved it. It's wholesome. It's about food.
I whipped up all of your favorites, fresh from the bells of the
It's right up my alley. So I says to myself, well, I should probably cook something from the show. In the first episode, they cook a scorpion monster hot pot that looked incredible. So I decided that I would make something similar. But beyond the food, what is this show about? You have these group of adventurers going into a dungeon. Instead of progressing and then leaving and then progressing and then leaving, they decide to stay in the dungeon and eat the monsters within it. And though I don't have access to actual monsters, I do have access to some pretty weird looking ingredients that I'm going to be using today. So let's get started, let's vibe out, and let's cook a delicious hot pot inspired by Delicious in Dungeon. We gotta start somewhere, so no better place than probably the carrot. Carrots are staples of good soups and broths, and they're heavy hitters when it comes to nutrients and can be counted on to provide some nice crunch and earthy flavor. We used to hate each other growing up, but we're cool now. This entire portion of the video is going to be dedicated to veggie prep. If you don't enjoy the relaxing vibes of hearing crunching and becoming one with a cabbage, then you can always skip ahead, but the real ones out there understand that it's a privilege to be able to watch it all unfold. I like to think about the journey that each vegetable has gone through before it ended up on the operating table before me. It's probably not nearly as deep as I pretended it is in my head, but I'd rather just romanticize it, so don't ruin this for me. But speaking of vegetables in general, are mushrooms actually considered vegetables? I ask knowing that I could quickly Google the answer, but I do know that they are a fungus, so that is a vegetable gray area. Really, I just want to know whose side they would fight on if plants and animals ever went to war with each other. My gut says that they would side with the veggies, but I can't say for sure. Either way, these particular mushrooms look absolutely wild, right? The ones in my hand are called enoki mushrooms, and they have been pretty popular on the internet in the last few years. The mushroom fun doesn't stop here though. I also snagged some large oyster mushrooms as well. Alright, let's move on and let's change up the tempo just a bit, starting with some really exciting snow peas. Our assortment of veggies is already overflowing, but you already know that an onion is coming in hot at some point. Arguably the best part of Delicious in Dungeon are the characters and the family dynamic they all share. The show definitely gives off warm, feel-good vibes that is balanced out with danger and comedic elements. It's really fitting for a show like this to have such a good balance, since cooking is often so much about balance. And I really appreciate in the show that it doesn't really gloss over the cooking segments. It really takes its time to highlight the hard work that goes into each dish and what flavors are being introduced. It's really cool to see in the show how food can surprise and bring so much excitement into one's day and life. With these large leeks dismantled, we're actually ready to move past the veggies, but let's first get them into the pot so they can get to know everybody else. Brute force is probably the best option here. Now I am going to bust out the pre-made stuff, some tofu, which I am going to cube. I don't really like slicing up tofu because it's so soft and it's not satisfying at all, which is a bummer, but it is what it is, and it's done. So into the pot it goes with everything else. And now for some frozen fried fish balls, which, if you aren't familiar with, are balls of fish paste that have been fried and then frozen. I know it's going to sound very hit or miss to people, but I'm going to send it, so wish me luck. Pretty simple stuff. The next step is for me to move over to the stovetop and do some cooking. I am going to cheat a little bit and use this pre-packaged ramen noodles and chashu pork. Please don't hold it against me. I just want this to turn out as well as possible, and attempting this on top of everything else would just be quite the feat. So hopefully I can get away with it. Over to the stovetop. Let me just struggle real quick to get my gas range to actually ignite. So before I actually get to work on our main pot of goodness, I need to introduce our frozen broth to some boiling water. Once it's heated up, we can then grab the main pot and then throw it down before us. Admire it for a few seconds, and then add the thawed broth and pork. I am then going to add a good bit of water to help break down the rest of the ingredients and to create the remaining broth. Everything is going to infuse hopefully into a beautiful and savory combination. If it doesn't, well, all I can say is that I tried my best, and in YouTube cooking, that's pretty much half the battle. But to help it along the way, I'm also going to create an electric combination of spices, soy sauce, and sake. I'm going to be frank with you, I am somewhat winging this combination to some degree, but I am using an educated guess on how it'll all come together. With 2024 winding down, what would you say is your favorite anime that you've watched this year? Personally, I would go with Dan to Dan, but yeah, let's talk about it down in the comments. If for some reason you don't actually watch anime and you're only here for the cooking, let me know what your favorite Asian dish is to cook. I just want to talk about some stuff in the comments. Please humor me. This pot of delicious looking ingredients is coming along well, but I would be lying if I didn't say we were all thinking, and I couldn't agree more, that we should add a couple pieces of bacon on top for some extra sodium and fatty flavor. The hot pot looks really nice, and I think this is going to end up being a great recipe heading into the coldest months here in Southwest Pennsylvania. It's this kind of food that gets me locked in to mentally withstand the upcoming seasonal depression that is looming on the horizon. At this point, it's mostly a waiting game, so with that said, I'm gonna go play some Stardew Valley, and then I'll come back here in a little bit and we'll see how it turned out. Or
we can make bread!
Dummy! I can't believe how stupid you are!
after a good amount of time has passed, we can check back on how the dish is coming along. Magnificent! So let's prepare some kale real quick to add back in for some extra nutrients and crunch. Now back over to that stovetop. Would you believe me if I told you that the hot pot and the combination of all of our ingredients smells incredible right now? Now I'm going to continue to mix.
It's night in the city, and I'm on my way back home. Humming on my favorite ditty, swinging like Natalie Cole. But then out of the blue.
So the hot pot's pretty much done, but I have some frozen gyoza in the freezer that I might as well warm up and have with the meal. I recently had a discussion about how gyoza dumplings have to be one of the best things in the world. There's an all-you-can-eat sushi restaurant near my house, and every time I've ever gone, I just go to town on the unlimited gyoza instead. I'm an absolute animal for the stuff. And so our hot pot gyoza is done. Let's get a bowl and let's start tasting. Well, our journey has come to an end. Before I taste it, I must say I'm proud of the way it came out. It smells incredible. I am going to plate it up at the end, but in the meantime, I'm going to try a couple of our ingredients that have absorbed the broth individually. It's so earthy and flavorful and just perfect for this winter day. It's so nice having so much variety and texture and flavor, even though it was all cooked in the same pot. It's just supposed to be a spicy dish. I'm coming in with a nice spicy mushroom sauce at the end. But I know you're waiting around, so here's how I plated it up. I wanted to capture the unique ingredients that we used, but also try to keep everything pretty separated. The taste was great, super savory, and the jarred spicy mushroom sauce at the end really complemented everything extremely well. Thanks to Delicious and Dungeon for inspiring this dish. It truly was delicious. Thanks for feasting with me today, and please subscribe if you liked what you saw.